What is suffering? In definition, suffering is a state of undergoing pain, distress, or hardship. In a religious sense, undergoing such pain will lead to spiritual growth, which in turn makes you closer to the Almighty. But what happens when suffering leads to nothing? When you suffer for nothing? What happens when God abandons you? This is Godland, or what it's more closely translated to, Wretched Land. Welcome back to the Artist's Choice. This film is a special one for me. This film got me into foreign films. Well, okay, to be fair, I have seen some prior Japanese films, but mainly tokusatsu films. This Danish/Icelandic film piqued my interest mainly because the cover had a big medium format camera on it, so I was immediately drawn towards it. And that title, too, Godland. Mwah, chef's kiss. I went home immediately anticipating what could be a masterpiece, a diamond in the rough, if you will. What I experienced, instead, was something completely unexpected, but in all the right ways. Before I get into Godland in all of its glory, I would like to give you a brief history lesson in which the film takes place to better understand the characters' feeling and motivations towards each other. Around this time, Iceland was under Danish rule and had been since 1380. Around the 19th century saw Iceland grow into a more independent sovereign nation. In 1918 saw Denmark recognize Iceland as its own independent nation. Denmark had a significant impact in the Icelandic economy, as many of Iceland's best scholars studied in Denmark, and the fact that Iceland could only trade with Denmark. Godland takes place before the events of 1980. And with that being said, let's talk about Godland. Act 1 starts with a prologue, saying that 12 images were found in Iceland belonging to a priest that perished long ago, and this film is based off those images. Disclaimer, this is not true. The filmmaker used this premise as a catalyst to start the film. In other words, it's made up. Scene 1 of Godland sees the main character Lucas tasked with constructing a church in a remote part of Iceland. He will have to travel through harsh environments which are very different from Denmark. With the help of his friend/translator and led by Icelandic citizen Ragnar, they embark on a perilous journey. From the start, we see Lucas is very uncomfortable with everyone around him. He clearly does not want to do this, but his fate pushes him on, learning the language from his friend. When Lucas first meets Ragnar, he is anything but pleased to see the Danish priest, referring to him as a Danish devil. This will be the first instance where Satan is referenced. We see Lucas is not equipped to be in such an environment. He can't even ride a horse. Ragnar makes fun of him and attempts to teach Lucas how to ride a horse. There is of course a language barrier between Lucas and the others. Only his friend can translate and speak Danish to Lucas. The camera language throughout the first act and almost throughout the whole entire film acts almost as an observer, very rarely capturing close-ups of characters' faces. I feel as if the aspect ratio they chose to release the film in is a representation of Lucas's isolation in an unfamiliar land. The camera will often frame the characters in the environment with wide shots, almost making the characters seem small within the environment. Almost as if the director is making Iceland itself the main character. When Lucas and crew hit a roadblock in the form of a river that's too deep to cross, Ragnar suggests that they wait 2 days so that the river can die down so they can pass. Lucas, being impatient, suggests otherwise and tells everyone, "We pass now." Lucas's unknown hubris accidentally gets his only companion killed. With his burial, Lucas's fear truly sets in. He is now truly alone. The next scene we see an image of a cross floating in a vast body of water, indicating all Lucas has now is his faith. It's also noteworthy to mention that this cross was being carried by Lucas's friend just before he died. Next, we see an image of a volcano erupting, which could mean Lucas's mental state is about to explode. As we see later on in the film, this is the case both physically and mentally. Act 2, we see the journey is getting to Lucas, him stating multiple times that he cannot do this anymore. At this point, Lucas feels God's pull, as if he's trying to let the land take Lucas. And what I think is a pivotal scene in Lucas's journey, we see him lighting a candle in a tent, where he is praying to God how alone he feels, how much he just wants to go home, and how he wishes this journey would end. But in the prayer, we see Lucas refer to himself as God and begins to become a little insane. The candle is then blown out by the wind, as if God has abandoned Lucas in this very moment. We physically see Lucas is tired and almost wants to die. In one notable scene where Lucas is taking a picture of his crew on an icy landscape, he mocks everyone by saying the dog moves less than you. Immediately afterwards, Lucas slips on the ice, bringing down his glass negatives, nearly destroying them. Lucas yells, "Satan." The climax of Lucas's exhaustion, we see him fall off his horse and down a steep sand hill. Ragnar stops the line and attempts to help the priest. In one long take, we see Ragnar and his crew seemingly abandon Lucas as he lies in the grass helpless. In this take, we see an eel. Earlier in the film, we see Ragnar tell a horror story of a weary traveler who stumbles upon a rare eel mating ritual. Ragnar describes the sound the eels made as a woman experiencing pleasure. That night, the traveler had a terrible nightmare of all his neighbors were having an orgy with the traveler's wife. When the traveler returns home, he had trouble looking at the village folk the same way, even had trouble making love to his wife. Since then, the traveler killed any eel he could see, so when we see this ill by Lucas, it is a bad omen. The next scenes, we are introduced to Anna and Ida. Little side note, Ida is played by the director's own daughter. These are some of the characters we actually get some close-up shots on. Maybe it's to represent their purity and innocence. In the next scene, we learn that Anna is holding Lucas in her basement, nursing him back to health. Once he awakens, we are then introduced to Anna's father. Their father was originally from Denmark and then decided to move to this remote part of Iceland. When Lucas wakes up, he learns that the church's construction is underway. In a very quiet and awkward dinner scene with the farmer and his family, along with Lucas and Ragnar, the father says he should thank Ragnar for bringing him safely, even though he brought him more dead than alive. And then they pray. This is the most awkward dinner prayer scene I have ever witnessed on film. The next day, the father kicks Lucas out of his house, saying that he can't raise two daughters while having a man in the house. We later learn that this is not the fact. The father actually has a disdain towards Lucas and what he is here for, saying we don't need more men like him here. His disdain for Lucas goes as far as to even warn his oldest daughter Anna to stay away from Lucas, saying that he won't be here that long anyways. We later learn that Lucas's horse goes missing, and all of a sudden Ragnar asks Lucas how he can become a man of God. Very suspicious. During this time, Anna begins to grow an affection for Lucas, as they begin to accompany each other frequently. Even when Lucas's horse goes missing, it is Anna who teaches Lucas how to ride a horse, more effectively than Ragnar could. A moment of peace and celebration comes in the form of a wedding, where we see Lucas smile for the first time in the whole film. He smiles and dances with Anna. Lucas is happy, or at the very least, at peace. All of that changes when Lucas is challenged to a friendly wrestling competition with Ragnar. The music stops, the two men go at it, and neither man can bring the other down. People watch with no amusement in their eyes. Act 3, we see the church is complete, and everyone is about to go home. But before he leaves, Ragnar wants Lucas to take a photograph of him. Lucas refuses, stating he is out of materials to take a photograph and starts to pack up his camera. Ragnar, in frustration, attempts to stop Lucas. Lucas, in retaliation, lets out his true feelings towards Ragnar in a fit of rage.
Jeg kan ikke, og jeg vil ikke tage et billede af dit modbydelige fjæs, dit hjerneløse svin.
In a twist of events, Ragnar begins to speak to Lucas in Danish, stating that his mother would speak to him every Sunday. He depicts how wrong the language feels in his mouth and how it sounds in his ears. Then he begins to confess to the priest of all his sins. The most striking sin that Ragnar confesses to was the killing of Lucas's horse. Lucas, unleashing all of his anger, rushes towards Ragnar. As they squabble, Lucas lands a fatal blow to Ragnar's head. As Lucas comes to terms with what he had done, Anna, seeing the discomfort and distress on Lucas's face, begins to make out with Lucas to make him feel better. Lucas and Anna commit a cardinal sin by making love in the house of God. The next scene, we see Lucas is giving his first Sunday Mass. Everyone waiting eagerly to hear the first sermon. Anna more than others. As Lucas begins, his train of thought is interrupted by the barking of a dog. Lucas at first ignores the noise, but the barking in turn makes a baby cry. As this continues, Lucas gets fed up and confronts the dog outside. As Lucas attempts to shoo away the dog, he slips and falls into mud, covering his clothes and face entirely with mud. In this scene, we see an array of emotions. This dog that had been traveling with Lucas for the whole journey was the catalyst for Lucas's breaking point. All of his anger, all of his suffering, all of his wrongdoing, all culminated in one scene. Lucas had tried to conform Iceland to his colonial ideals. He had tried to attempt and accept his new home, but in this scene, Iceland has rejected Lucas, as it has done again and again throughout the film. But this time, Lucas notices the sign, as if God did not want him to embark in this mission. So, Lucas runs away. He abandons Iceland and runs away from his new church. The farmer notices Lucas's absence and begins to search for him. Anna, who was worried that her father might do something to Lucas, tries to make her father promise that he won't harm Lucas, but her father cannot promise that. The farmer quickly catches up with Lucas, as he's still inexperienced about riding horses. In a turn of events, the farmer stabs Lucas, saying you must have fallen off your horse. The next few scenes, we see Lucas's decaying horse alongside the seasons taking over Lucas's rotting corpse. The last scene, we see Ida approaching what is left of Lucas and saying he will return to the earth and soon flowers will grow, and how that's beautiful. Next, we see just that, flowers growing around Lucas's remains, and the closing of Denmark's national anthem. Godland is a journey of a film. With a 2-hour and 22-minute runtime, it shows how you can conform elements and people to your way of living, the struggle of man versus nature, how one's faith is sometimes not enough. If you get your hands on this film, I highly recommend viewing it. Its art direction and stylistic camera choices make for an interesting and compelling viewing. Godland is a visual treat, and if Godland teaches us anything, is don't go to fucking Iceland.